Hey, LinkedIn, and welcome to Business Unusual. This is a live show where we talk about the changing nature of work. I'm Susie Jackson. I'm a news editor at LinkedIn. Let's take a look at some of the top stories members are talking about on LinkedIn today, September 1st. The FAA is saying Amazon can operate as a drone airline. Amazon is one step closer to delivering packages via drone after it received designation as an air carrier. The company is now cleared to begin testing drone delivery in the US. And get ready for more Zoom calls. The video conferencing system beat analyst estimates for its second quarter results, with revenue more than quadrupling from this time last year. Zoom updated its forecast for the rest of 2020, seeming confident it can maintain its edge. For more stories like that, check out the news module. It's to the right of your news feed if you're on your desktop, or if you're on the mobile app, click into the search box. You'll see those stories and more. That brings us to our poll question today from the LinkedIn news team. We want to know if you think the workday should be cut to 6 hours. You can vote in the stream by leaving a comment. You could say A for yes, B for no. Or if you say C for depends, let us know why. What are you thinking about that answer? We're going to get to the results at the end of the show. If your office is a kitchen table or an old closet, maybe the living room couch, you are probably one of a third of Americans who are now working from home. For many of us, this is new territory, but for our guest today, this is business as usual. Laura Vanderkam has been working from home for the past 18 years and is the author of the book, The New Corner Office: How the Most Successful People Work from Home. If you have questions for her, feel free to leave them in the comments section. We're going to get to as many as we can throughout the show today. And please join me in welcoming Laura Vanderkam to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Laura. You have worked from home from 18 years. For some of us, it's been closer to 7 or 8 months. I think we can learn a lot from you today. I want to get started by talking at an individual level. So the person sitting on that couch maybe or in the closet, talk to us about how we should be structuring the day now. We're not really working 9 to 5, or maybe we should be. Love your opinion on that. There's no more commutes. How should we be thinking about each day?
Yeah, well, there are so many changes that are possible when people are working from home. And when everyone first started working from home in March, there was a tendency to try to just replicate whatever had happened in the office. So, if you would have been expected to be at your desk at 9, then everyone has to check in on Slack at 9 or whatever it is. But ultimately, remote work gives us an opportunity to innovate rather than just replicate. And so I challenge people to think of your day not as a set number of hours that are bookended by a commute, but a set number of tasks that you intend to get done, a set number of steps toward your long-term professional organizational goals. And if you set those challenging but doable steps each day, then you've had a good day when you've done all of them. And you also know when it's okay to quit, whatever time that happens to be. And in the absence of those cues of people walking out the door, that can be very important.
So that's good on the individual level. Do you think that you first have to have a conversation with your manager or some guidance from your organization that it's okay to make that switch?
Well, it always is helpful to have a conversation. You don't want to just, suddenly disappear at 4 p.m. every day. If people have been working till 6 p.m., people are going to wonder what on earth happened. But I do think that as we are moving into this longer term working from home setup, it's a good idea to have those conversations. Today is a great day to speak up, to say, well, why are we working how we're working? Are there better ways we could be working? Is there any reason we actually have to all be here at 9? Or if we don't really start our meetings until different points, maybe we could change hours. Maybe we could structure our days differently based on tasks rather than time. Yeah, it takes a little bit of courage to have these conversations, but you're probably not the only one thinking it. Your manager may be thinking it too. So, challenge yourself to pick up the phone and call people and see what you can work out.
That's great advice. So talk to your manager. And I'm interested more in the organizational perspective too. So this is kind of the midterm example of talk to your manager, see how it works to switch to a more task-based way to approach your day. Do you think organizations should be doing anything more top-down to implement that, thinking about this medium term? And then as things start to reopen eventually as well, does the workday look like it did when we left the office?
I think the workday is going to look very different, and probably more specifically, the work week will be looking different. I don't think many places are going to adopt 100% remote strategy going forward, but I think a lot of places won't be 100% in the office anymore either. I think the balance is going to be different. We're going to have a lot of organizations as we come out of this pandemic looking at more of a hybrid schedule, maybe 2 to 3 days a week in the office, 2 to 3 days a week at home, or maybe 1 week a month in the office and the other time at home. And that way people can get the best of both worlds. But yes, this is an opportunity for organizations in general to rethink what success and productivity looks like. In the past, we thought that good management meant that you had rows of busy-looking people in desks between 9 and 5, and when you can't see that anymore, it really throws a lot of people for a loop. But you can sit in a desk for 8 hours and accomplish nothing. Right? Or you can sit in a desk for 12 hours and accomplish nothing. Or, you can also sit in a desk for 2 hours and accomplish nothing. It's really not about how much time you are there. It's about whether you are making meaningful progress toward your organization's goals. And so this is really an opportunity for everyone to think about results rather than just time.
So thinking about time for a minute, I want to thank everyone who's joining us and taking the time to have this conversation with us in the stream today. We have some folks joining. We have Lisa from New York, Cathay from New Orleans, welcome. Alan from Texas, welcome to the broadcast today. Danielle from Florida and Linda from Chicago, thank you for joining us on Business Unusual. Today, we're having a conversation with Laura Vanderkam. She's worked from home for 18 years and is giving us some tips about how we can do that more productively. And Laura, talk to some of the people in the stream who might be joining us from their couches. Maybe they've been working that way for the last few months, and maybe they don't know how much longer they're going to be working from that couch. Is it important to designate a physical space, even if you think it might be a kind of a short-term situation that you're in?
Yeah, I think it's increasingly clear that this may not be a short-term thing. And even if you will eventually be back in the office to some degree, we talked about how I think the balance will be different. And so remote work is going to be part of the mix in a bigger way from now on. And if that's the case, well, you deserve to have a real professional spot that you can work from productively. The couch is maybe comfortable for a while, but it's not great for your back for 8 hours a day. You do need a real chair. You need a real desk. Ideally, you need some natural light by a window. You need a door for privacy. If the only place you can get that is your bedroom, that's okay. Just come up with some sort of way that there's a bit of a screen or some way to separate, your sleeping, relaxing area from your working area. But if this is not going away anytime soon, and I think that may be the case, you need to make sure that you are comfortable, because discomfort is distracting, and make sure that your tools are such that you can succeed. So think about where your pain points are. Think about if there are new tools you can get, if you can spend a little bit of money to upgrade something, but what you can do to make it better, and see if you can make that happen in the next few days.
I think it's an interesting point about separating your space. For some folks working from homes, maybe that's easy to go upstairs to a spare bedroom. If you're in an apartment, maybe less so. We had another guest in the show once share that she just used masking tape to mark off a space in her home. So a pretty low cost way to do it. But mentally, she found it helped her really mark the space that was for work and the space that was for home. We have a comment from Dolores in the stream who loves what you're saying about the workday being about important tasks rather than time. She thinks it's a great way to measure your achievement. And with that, I'd love to bring up our poll again. So Dolores and Laura are talking about using the workday to think about tasks rather than time. But we want to know from you, do you think the workday should be cut back to 6 hours? Coming back to the notion of time for a moment, maybe you can accomplish just as many tasks in that 6 hour time frame as you can in an 8 hour day, or even longer if you're really burning the candle at both ends. Tell us by voting A for yes, B for no, or if you have other thoughts, drop those into the comments, and we're going to get to as many of those as we can. Laura, coming back to the notion of time again, what do you tell people who aren't sure if this is going to be lasting or not? The pandemic certainly seems like it's lasting, but different companies are approaching this differently. Some are asking people to come back maybe in areas where the virus isn't spreading as heavily. How do you mentally navigate the uncertainty of where you're going to be for the next month, 6 months, 18 months?
Yeah, it can be really hard to be productive if you don't know what the future looks like. I think just as your listener wrote about putting masking tape around a space, you can kind of compartmentalize in your mind about, well, I don't need to know where I'm going to be in 18 months. I can focus on, let's say, the next month. This is what I know the next month is going to look like. I can be pretty sure of that. And so these are the things I need to do to be successful in the next month. These are the tools I need. These are the strategies I'm going to use. And then after that's gone, as it's gone, focus on the next few weeks. weeks and then focus on the next few weeks. I think a lot of people, though, are navigating the question of actually kind of liking working from home. There's been some interesting polls about how a lot of people who have worked from home for the first time in the wake of COVID-19 actually like it and would like to keep doing it to some degree moving forward. And if that's the case, and your manager is a little bit more unclear, like they're saying, well, it's been okay during a crisis, but I'd like everyone back in the office as soon as possible. I think it's really important to approach this conversation in a very thoughtful and strategic way, and maybe sort of document some really big wins that you had during this time where you've been working from home. Show ways that you have been able to add more value to the company if you've been less distracted, if you've gotten through bigger projects, if we've been talking about time, maybe you've even been working more. It shouldn't be about hours, but maybe you have been working more and that would impress your manager. But come up with these things and then say, well, maybe we could do a hybrid solution for a while, 2 to 3 days in the office, 2 to 3 days at home. Try it out. Again, only look at the next month. How does it go for the next month? Is everyone happy for a month? Okay, great. Let's try it again for another month. And by taking that incremental approach, you're more likely to stay with a schedule that you'd like long term.
Yeah, and Rhonda in the stream here echoing what you're saying, that some folks enjoy working remotely, but some are definitely struggling. Ashley says she enjoys it, but is struggling with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home too. Ashley, I'm in the exact same boat as you. I hear you. And Linda says she would prefer to be back in the office. She misses the true personal interaction there. I'm interested in thinking about that interaction bit, that mental health bit of it. We've talked a lot in the show about the highs and lows of the productivity changes during the pandemic. When it first hit, people were panic working longer hours, maybe getting more done. Companies saw a rise in productivity, but wondered about the cost. How long was that actually sustainable? Can you, with that in mind, can you talk about the importance of creativity and your health along with just the productivity piece of it? How do they all weave together?
Yeah, and it isn't just about productivity. I mean, anyone can work like crazy for a short period of time, but that tells you nothing, because just because you burn through something very quickly doesn't mean you can sustain it long term. And I would like people to be able to work well forever, right? Or at least for a couple of years moving forward. And so you need to think about that long-term piece of it. I challenge people to really think about their day-to-day life. What works for you on a day-to-day basis? Is there anything that's a real pain point that you could get help with, that maybe it's a little bit of money you need to invest in? I know that a lot of people are really struggling with a lack of childcare right now, or their school-age children are needing help with virtual schooling. Maybe it's investing in a few hours of childcare that would make that more sustainable. It's also about carving out some open space. A lot of people who are working from home, as you said, there's some of the panic working. People are like, well, my boss is going to think I'm watching Netflix, so I have to be at my computer constantly. I have to answer every email within 5 seconds, or else they're going to think I'm off, doing nothing. And that's a real trap. I mean, it's understandable why people do it, but if you are responding to email constantly, if you're never away from your laptop, you're not going to have the space to come up with the creative ideas that make people want to work with you in the first place. So shut it down sometimes. Schedule in a few breaks during the day. I think 3 breaks in roughly a normal workday is a great idea. 1 in mid-morning, 1 for lunch, 1 in mid-afternoon. Make one of those breaks physical, like going for a walk, walking your dog, doing an exercise video, something like that. Make one of them social, whether that's having lunch with your family members or calling a colleague and chatting with him or her. But if you do that, you'll have far more energy and life will feel a lot more sustainable.
So find ways to build back in some of that social interaction that you might be missing with colleagues. You're saying lunch with family or taking a walk. Maybe you're seeing some friendly faces along your route. You also talked a little bit about fear, the fear that your boss thinks you're watching Netflix, or the fear that you're not available all the time and people are going to wonder where you are. Talk to people in the stream who might be worried about seeing this as a career setback, who might think this is not a time to advance, not a time to get a promotion because it's just a panic scramble time. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. And it's interesting how remote work has been repositioned over the past few months, because in the past, it really was seen as like this work-life balance perk for people who are trying to like take their foot off the gas for a little bit. So maybe people who needed more time for family or caregiving responsibilities. And even then, it was only going to be on Friday, because everyone knows that Friday is the least productive day of the week. So we want to minimize the opportunity cost. And then in March, so many people started working from home that it could no longer be delineated of like, oh, well, it's the unambitious people who are working from home and the ambitious people are in the office. Well, everyone's at home. So the ambitious and the unambitious alike, right? So we've changed that. We've broken the link between this idea that working from home is just a work-life balance perk. And so because that's the case, I see no reason why you can't position yourself to go for a promotion, go for a raise. Think about what your organization wants. I mean, most of the time it's more money in one way or another, bigger profits, lower costs. What can you do to make that happen, right? What can you do to move the needle there? And if you can justify that, you're very well positioned to ask for more money. If you can show that you've been taking on leadership roles as things have changed, which a lot of people have for the first time. Maybe you've been organizing virtual social get-togethers with your colleagues. Maybe you've led a project because you figured out how to do it before other people were. Well, again, you are very well positioned to say, look, I've already been doing this. I think I would like my title formalized, right? So just as with in office work, set up the conversation, list what you've done, prepare your manager for what you'd like. And if it's not happening right now, ask to revisit it in a couple of months and ask what needs to happen for the raise or promotion to move forward then.
I think that's an interesting point, that some of these things you were mentioning about maybe you're great at organizing Zoom conference call happy hours or something. Those might seem like kind of survival mechanisms right now, but you can actually point to them and say that I'm excelling in this new remote work world. It's not going anywhere. Here's why, I deserve something more. I think that's a great way to reframe it. Bob in the stream here says that he has found having a routine at home has been very helpful. Spending time for exercise and identifying a place in my home where I work at. He says he has a window now. That's nice, Bob.
That's good. Good for Bob.
Yeah, that's what I can really help. He says to be open and stay creative and as fresh as possible. So coming back to that idea of not just productivity, but creativity and being fresh. So you had mentioned, the Zoom happy hour kind of idea. I know personally, whenever I see anything like that come in, I just feel like I don't have time for it right now. I have those two little kids like Linda at home, and anything extra feels like just that, just extra. Do you think that there are any alternatives to things like that, to the Zoom connections, that you can still maintain those personal connections with colleagues?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I'm not a huge fan of the Zoom happy hour, because the problem with any virtual social interaction is it has to be facilitated and it has to be structured. And we're so used to office workplaces be like, okay, yeah, we're going to celebrate. We're going to go have a happy hour. And then you have 12 people stand in a bar. And the way it works is people split off into 2 to 3 person groups for conversation and then shuffle around. And it's much, much harder to do that virtually. So you need somebody to be in charge and to be asking everybody questions and to facilitating the social interaction, which means that a happy hour is probably not the best idea. You're much better off doing, say, a book club. Like 6 of you discuss a book together, or you bring in, mail everybody art sets and then have an artist instruct you on how to paint something, or hire a performer to, do a concert for you guys, for a small individual concert, and then teach you about her instrument. These are all much better ways to do virtual socializing than just throw everybody together and say, okay, make yourself a cocktail and have 10 other people in boxes stare at you. I mean, it just doesn't sound very fun. So you have to think a little bit more creatively about it. But of course, group get-togethers are not the only way to socialize. I really encourage people to pick up the phone. We've forgotten in this era of smartphone that a phone is actually about calling someone. You don't need an appointment. You can call your colleagues, just say hi. Like if you would have talked to somebody in the hallway after a meeting about something funny that happened, well, after the Zoom meeting, pick up the phone and call that person and have that exact same conversation that you would have had in the hallway on the way to the bathroom about the funny thing that happened, right? Just try to recreate some of these casual social interactions, or calling a colleague for a break, or calling a colleague to say goodbye at the end of the day. And you'll feel far more connected. Like you do not have to just sit in your home office all by yourself. You are welcome to maintain those social ties. It just takes a little bit more work.
Well, it sounds shocking to me to think about picking up the phone and calling someone out of the blue, but I think you make a good point.
You can do it.
I would talk to them in the hall outside. They might be just as shocked to pick up that phone call. But talk about that for a moment. The calling a colleague to mark the end of the day. We don't have a commute anymore to tell us it's time to go home. It's time to shut off. Are there things like that we should be considering building into the day to really tell ourselves it's time to stop working?
Yes, and it is so important to do this, because a commute provides a natural break between home and work, and then work and home. And it has to happen at some point. Like you're going to leave the office at some point. You're not going to sleep there. So it provides that boundary. And when you work from home, that is just absent. And it is so easy to half work and half surf the web late into the night, not really getting anything done, but not relaxing either. And that's really the worst of all possible setups. So come up with some sort of fake commute for the end of the day to tell yourself, okay, I am done now. We talked about measuring your day by task rather than time. If you've crossed everything off your task list for the day, great. You're done. That can be your demarcation. But it can be other things too. Go walk the dog again. If you need to pick up children at daycare or school, if they're in person school, you can go do that. Maybe it's going for a walk around the block. Maybe it's running an errand. Maybe it's checking in with your family members. You can call a colleague to say goodbye. You can call your team to say goodbye. It's interesting. A number of organizations have sort of 9 a.m. check-ins for everybody to see that they're all working. I think if you're going to do that, then you owe it to your employees to also have a 4:45 p.m. goodbye ceremony where you tell everyone, okay, it is time to go. You are done. We have fought the good fight. We are living to march again tomorrow. But come up with something. And if it's hard for you to do this, it might help to put other things into your personal life that force a stop to it. So when I first started working from home many, many years ago, I didn't have a family at the time. So I didn't have like kids that I needed to feed dinner or that needed my attention at night. My roommate traveled all the time. So there was nothing to make me stop working. And so what I ultimately did was I joined 3 community choirs. And so 3 nights a week, I had to leave the apartment to go to rehearsal, which forced me to stop working at about 6 o'clock at night. And I really became much more efficient. And because these rehearsals were scheduled, I knew people were counting on me. It provided that extra nudge to stop. So maybe it's not choirs for you, but think about what it is. If it's a check-in with relatives, if it's an appointment to garden, to run with a friend, whatever it is, something that will force you to stop, you will find yourself enjoying work so much more.
Well, now that we know you're in 3 community choirs, we might ask you to be the entertainment at our next get together. You talked there about the end of the day ritual, but I know you also wrote the book, What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast. I'm curious, do you think the routines that you saw highlighted there, are they still applicable now? People love that kind of what does everyone else who's successful do before they eat breakfast kind of stuff. Is it the same? Is it different? What do you think?
It's a little different. I mean, one of the reasons that people needed to take advantage of early mornings is that when you are commuting to an office, it becomes very difficult to do other things at other points in the day. So if you want to exercise, for instance, once you've gotten yourself ready and commuted to an office, it's unlikely that you're going to do it while you're there. And then by the time you're leaving work, people are often very tired. If they have caregiving responsibilities and need to get home to their families. So early morning tends to be the time when it has to happen. Or if you have ambitions to write a novel, like you're not going to feel like writing the novel at 7 p.m. Like you're just not. So you're better off getting up at 6 a.m. and writing it then. Now, if you're working from home, time is a little bit more fluid. So maybe you could take an exercise break in the middle of the day and get your exercise in there. Maybe if you have creative pursuits, you can take a longer lunch break. And, if you've got your lunch there, you don't need to go out to a restaurant and get it. So you could take that 30 minutes and work on your novel then. So there are less of these issues where you have to do it first thing. That said, if you are a person who is dealing with young children at home, that you're going to be interrupted by your kids in the course of the day, sometimes getting up a little bit early and seizing those morning hours can allow you to start the day feeling like you've already been productive. Like, so you do an hour of focused work before the kids are up, before they need you. And that way, when you're interrupted later, you can be a little bit more relaxed about it because you've already scored a victory, you've already done something. So you don't need to worry about it quite so much.
Yeah, we've got some members in the stream weighing in on this idea of routines. Rob said he's a good point about the lack of commute, although he doesn't miss his in the DC area, probably a lot of traffic. Nicole says phone calls are more important than ever. So Nicole, be brave and call people. I don't know if I'm ready to do that yet. She says she has phone conversations with team members every day, and it takes the place of some of those hallway conversations. So good to know that you're already out there, Nicole. Lisa says to set a call with a distant family member you haven't spoken with in quite some time. Jack agrees that setting limits is very important. And Stephen, to your point about the before breakfast routine, says that I used to wake up at 3 a.m. to work out and run. And he writes, I'm so happy in all caps. I can believe that, Stephen, to not have a commute anymore.
Yes. 3 a.m. is something. Wow.
Oh my God.
Breakfast.
I hope you're at least at 5 a.m. now, having some time to do that. Laura, thank you so much for joining us today. I think these tips and tricks have been really helpful to myself and everyone else who is currently working from home and not sure when that's going to end. So I really appreciate you coming by the show to share with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you for joining us as well. I want to check in now on the results of our poll. We wanted to know if you thought the workday should be shortened to 6 hours. Oh, yes, a lot of you said yes, 65%. We have yeses from Diane, from Summer, from Sheila, Dawn, Alan, and Ashley. Thank you for voting. But some no's as well. Stephen, Gregory, Nicole says, I can't even get 12 hours into 8 as it is. Cloning myself has been challenging. And then some other folks saying it depends. Lucille Dolores Christine says it depends on whether or not there are pressing projects that need to be completed. Kathy says it depends on the industry. She says she's a travel advisor and basically a volunteer at this point since travel has tanked. So thank you for weighing in with those answers. We've got them across the board. Many of you saying that we should break down to 6 hours. And our guest today, Laura Vanderkam, saying maybe you shouldn't even be thinking about hours. You should be thinking about tasks instead. Tomorrow on Business Unusual, my colleague Caroline Fairchild will be speaking with Lisa Skeet Tatum. She's the founder of Landit. They're going to have a conversation about the skills you need to pivot careers in the pandemic. I hope you tune in for that. It's going to be a great conversation. Business Unusual is here from the LinkedIn news page at 12 Eastern every day. So please tune in for that conversation tomorrow. And thank you for joining us today. I'm Susie Jackson.